Do you ever wonder why your wireless gear cuts out? And also, how many wireless can you use at once? That question has been by far the most common question that I've got asked lately, so it's time to make a video about it, and it actually ties in to why does your wireless gear cut out? So I'm going to kind of kill two birds with one stone with this video. Now that question usually falls into the camp of how many wireless can I use of this one wireless system, or a question of like, if I use this for my wireless vocal mic and then my bass player gets a wireless, is it going to be okay? All of this will apply to wireless mics, wireless guitar, bass, and instruments, and wireless in-ear monitors. The answer is it all depends. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. But for real, why does it depend, and why is it not just a simple answer? And a lot of what I go over in this video is just worth knowing about wireless gear in general as well. Also, at the end of the video, I will be doing a giveaway to one of my subscribers, so consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this in the future, and let's go ahead and get started. So first off, just a very basic overview of how wireless works. You have a transmitter, and you have a receiver, and they need to be set to the same wireless frequency in order to communicate with each other. Some examples of wireless frequencies can be 500.100 megahertz, 918.150 megahertz, 2.412 gigahertz, 5.825 gigahertz, and so on and so forth. Your transmitter and your receiver just need to be set to the same frequency in order to communicate with each other without a cable. What can cause interference, dropouts, noise, or less range with your wireless? Usually it's because something else is using that frequency already, or something else is just causing interference on that specific frequency or within a range of frequencies. So here's an example. So right now I'm talking to a microphone that is paired to this frequency right here, but then if I turn on another wireless that is set to the same frequency or something somewhat close actually, you can hear what actually happens. I start to lose a little bit of stable. Let's space them out really close to what's happening. So when I do that, the wireless goes, which one am I supposed to be listening to here? There's two frequencies and it just gets mixed up, and that's how you get dropouts. So wireless systems just need to have a clean frequency to transmit and receive on. Now, most wireless gear will have a range of different frequency options that it has to find a clear signal. Cheaper wireless gear will have less frequency options, and more higher end wireless systems will have more options of frequencies that it can transmit and receive on. So cheaper wireless might have less frequencies. Here's a really cheap XLR adapter that I've reviewed. This one only has 4 channels to choose from. There's another one that I reviewed that has about 16 channels to choose from. There's another system that I reviewed that's an in-ear monitor system that has 1 frequency to transmit on. Now these are more higher end, and these have thousands of frequencies to choose from. Now at this point, it actually makes sense to look at tuning bandwidth. So instead of just saying, oh, it has 4 frequencies it can find, it has a range or a bandwidth of frequencies that it has for options to find a clear frequency. So if a wireless operates between 500 and 512 megahertz, that's a tuning bandwidth of 12 megahertz. There's a bunch of different individual frequencies within that range that the wireless transmitter and the receiver can communicate on. Then another wireless system might have a bandwidth of 550 to 574 megahertz. That's a 24 megahertz tuning bandwidth. So that has twice as many frequencies to choose from than the 12 megahertz bandwidth. Make sense? In my opinion, anything above 40 megahertz of tuning bandwidth is where you start to get into professional wireless gear, and you're going to understand why here in a little bit. So that's a lot of information, but what is the main factor that determines if your wireless is going to cut out and how many you can use at once? The answer is the location that you are using the wireless gear at. So the venue or the church or the film set that you are using wireless gear. Each place that you perform or use wireless gear is going to have different frequencies that are available for you to use. In different locations, there can be other wireless equipment, there can be TV channels, there can be Wi-Fi routers, there can be other certain metallic or electronic equipment or LED screens that can also cause interference on certain frequencies. 2 other common reasons that your wireless might not work. Line of sight is always best. Have the transmitter and the receiver always be able to see each other. And also if you have too many wireless antennas all bunched together, that can also cause problems with wireless gear. But for this video, I'm mostly focusing on the frequencies. So some places that you go are going to be more prone to interference, and other places will be more open and have less potential for interference. So if I say something has a crowded RF environment, that just means that there is a lot of other stuff going on in that location that can cause interference with your wireless gear. So anytime I say RF, just think of the wireless signal. So a crowded RF environment means that there's a lot going on in these frequency ranges. And there are tools that you can use to scan for the RF environment. I've demoed 2 of them before on this channel. This is the one that I like probably the most, and I'll link to both of them down below in the description. And part of the reason why I really like the Audio Technica in your monitor system a lot is because you can actually scan from that system, and it will tell you, and it shows you a graph of how busy the RF environment is. I do have a full video going over it. Check out my video on that if you're interested. Just so you can understand a few things, I'm going to show you how this works. So this is basically just going to show me how the wireless RF environment looks within a certain frequency range. Right now, I have this set so that it spans from 470 up to 608 megahertz, but you can set it to different intervals as well. Now looking at this is actually a very clean RF environment. You have a little bit of stuff going on down here. None of this is really anything worth worrying about. If I saw something like this is on my Audio Technica, which has a graph that works in a very similar way, that would mean that there is a lot going on in that frequency range. Make this as easy as possible. No signal is good. Those are clean frequencies. Lots of signal is bad. That means those frequencies are more likely to get interference. You can see it says on 481 point about 200 megahertz. There's a little bit of noise, but it's at negative 86. So that's not really anything that I'm worried about. So let me turn on this cheap XLR adapter. And you can see that there is a massive spike right here at 552 megahertz. And that level is at negative 12 now. So that is a very strong signal because this wireless is now transmitting on that frequency. That means any other wireless that I'm using needs to avoid that frequency. And it has to be spaced out enough away from it. So that's basically what you're looking for with a graph like this. Down here with very little signal, that means that it's generally clean to use. Anything that spikes up like this means that it's already being used and it's very crowded. So I'm going to turn that one off. I'm going to turn on this different one right here. This one is set to 555.825 megahertz. You can see that the RF Explorer isn't 100% perfect, but it's close enough for this demo. Here's another wireless I'm going to turn on, and this one is set to 549.250 megahertz. And you can see there's a nice big jump right around that frequency. So I can see the RF environment using something like this. So here, there's not a whole lot that I have to worry about. It's pretty open. However, to prepare for this video, I've actually been getting footage of different scans that I've had at different venues that I've played at. I've either used my Audio Technica system or I've used this system to see how the wireless environment is going to look at the location that I'm playing at. So the footage can be a little bit blurry, but you can see at this location in Denver, 470 to 506 is pretty crowded. There's this little spot right here where it's not too bad, but you can see it's pretty crowded here. But pretty much from 506 to 542 is pretty open besides this one strong peak right here. So if I had wireless that operates in this range, they're definitely going to be better than the ones in the lower frequency range. Going up, you can see it's pretty clear until it gets to about 550 or so. And then from 550 up to 578 megahertz, it is very crowded. But watch this. Watch what happens when I go up to 572 up to 608 megahertz. I mean, there's a lot going on in here, so I would really want to avoid using anything in this frequency range. But that was just one location. That would be a crowded RF environment. Here's one that I did up in Vail, Colorado. You can see as I scroll through it, there's basically nothing going on up here. There's a few tiny spikes. There was one spike total somewhere around 500 megahertz, so that's probably one wireless frequency that's on right now, and I should avoid that. This is a very clean RF environment. The main thing I want you to take away from this is that as I'm going from venue to venue, the RF environment is going to look different. Therefore, different wireless will be able to work at different locations. Is that making sense? And you can see that the graphs look completely different as I go from venue to venue. The wireless frequencies that are open are different from venue to venue. So those scans were from 470 to 608. If you have wireless gear that operates in a different frequency range, the same idea applies. So this doesn't even show like how many you can use at once. It shows if you can even use one wireless at once, because it all depends on what frequency your wireless system is transmitting on. What happens if the wireless that you're using transmits in a frequency band or a frequency range that is already taken at the venue that you're playing at? So see what I mean? It all just depends on what frequencies your wireless operates in. There is more to that, and I am going to get to how many you can use at once, but does it make sense on why wireless cuts out and there isn't really an answer on how many you can use at once? Because it all depends on where you are performing. And this is why in my 5 common mistakes with wireless music gear video that I did, the first problem that I mentioned was people who don't scan. And I see this happen constantly is they'll say, oh, my wireless isn't working. I'll say, did you scan? They go, well, no, but it was working just fine at the last place that I played. Well, yeah, that's why. Because in that location, that frequency was open and available. at this new place that you're playing, something else is causing interference on those frequencies. Here's something else to think about. Here's a true example of something that happened with me. There's this place that we play that's near the airport. When we perform there, the frequency range of 470 to 516 megahertz is very crowded. I have a lot of trouble finding a clear frequency there. This right here is a $1,000 Sennheiser in-ear monitor system, the Sennheiser G4 system. It's a great in-ear monitor system. This one in particular operates between 470 and 516 megahertz. This wireless XLR adapter with 4 channels, this operates in 5.8 gigahertz. And this right here is a cheap $50 guitar wireless system that operates in the 900 megahertz frequency range. These two systems, I don't usually have a problem with finding a clear frequency up there. And yet the $1,000 in-ear monitor system struggles to find a clear frequency. Is that because the cheap stuff is better than the expensive stuff? No, it just means that these frequencies are open, these ones are not. But that's just a more extreme example. It just depends on what wireless frequencies your gear works on and what is available for the wireless frequencies in the location that you are performing at. And this is why if you go on like Amazon reviews and you'll see people say, oh, works perfect. I have no problems with this $50 wireless. And then you see people saying, well, this thing is absolute junk. It didn't work at the first show that I tried it at. That's why. And that's why you can't really trust reviews, is they don't understand that. That's why there's such an inconsistency with like Amazon reviews. Okay, but seriously, how many can you use at once? So with most wireless gear, most of them will list how many you can use at once. That's usually one of the specs that they list. So when they say that you can use 20 of these all at once, that is in a completely clear wireless environment. It is not always going to be that way. So my general guideline is just cut that in half. So if it says it can use 20, I just assume that you can use about 10. Sometimes those wireless will be available and you'll be able to use all 20 at once. Other times it's going to be much less. So just as a guideline, I like to cut that in half, because there is something important to know about using more wireless on stage at once. But let me go ahead and I'm going to show you something. I'm going to turn on 2 of these. And actually, you know what? I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it's kind of hard to see. I'm going to have the RF Explorer show wireless from 540 to 560 megahertz so we can zoom in a little bit. Now keep in mind this demo is not 100% perfect because I have to have these antennas right by each other for this demo. So you can see when I move the wireless away, there's not this massive amount of other noise coming in. But watch what happens when I have 2 of these turn on. Shouldn't there be only 2 spikes, right? I'm only transmitting on 2 different wireless frequencies. Let me turn this Sennheiser one off really quick. You can see there's that spike on 552 from the wireless XLR. But then when I turn on this one, there should just be 1 extra spike, right? But what are all these other ones? That is called intermodulation. And again, remember, it's more extreme because I have them right by the antenna, but even when I move them away, you can still see there are these other spikes here. That is something called intermodulation. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm going to link to another video that explains it. But the more wireless you have on stage, the more they actually interact with each other and the more they make other wireless frequencies that are not available for you to use. And you can see when I move these closer to the antenna, you can see that the RF signal goes crazy. Again, this is a reason why you don't want to have a bunch of antennas next to each other and why it can cause a bunch of issues. But now watch what happens when I turn on a third wireless. You can see there's even more mini spikes that show up from the intermodulation. But just know the more wireless that you have at once, the more there is going to be intermodulation and other frequencies than just the single frequency that you use of your wireless. That means that other wireless cannot use that frequency. So that is important to know. And you do also want to understand how groups or banks work together. I do have a video going over this if you want to check it out. Within groups and banks, they have different channels which will have different frequencies that actually work really well together. Again, check out my video. It's definitely worth knowing that. And there is something else to know, is that analog wireless actually has more intermodulation than digital wireless. Digital wireless actually has less intermodulation. So you can actually use more digital wireless all at once. I do have a video going over analog versus digital wireless gear. Definitely worth checking out. I'll link to it up above and down below. So almost every time that I get asked, how many can I use this wireless with this wireless? How many wireless can I use at once? Almost every time people are asking that for the cheap wireless gear. Cheaper stuff have less frequencies to choose from. So you also have to think about intermodulation. There's just more of a chance that your wireless systems are going to cut out when you have less frequencies to choose from. The number one mistake that I see is people trying to use too much cheap wireless all at once. And I know this because this happened to me. I got a cheap wireless system. I loved the freedom of being wireless. And I was like, well, everything's going to be wireless. And I got a bunch of cheap stuff. We had about 6 or 7 wireless systems on stage and it worked for a while. And I still remember the show where it just all came crashing down. And I asked, I was like, why is this not working? It just worked at the other location. It was fine at those locations where those frequencies were open, but then we played at another venue where those frequencies were not available. So hopefully now you have a little bit more of an understanding of wireless, and you understand why there is no definitive answer of you can use 4 of these wireless all at once. Every show, it's going to be perfect, no problems at all. So when I get asked, can I use this one that's on 2.4 and then this one that's in UHF? It all depends if those frequencies are open. Can I use this one that's in 5.8 and then this one that's in 900 megahertz? It all depends if those frequencies are open. Some people occasionally do get really concerned with this and they're like, well, this is just too much information. I'm just going to stick with the cable. I'm like, well, cables actually go bad all the time, by the way. I have more problems with cables than I do with wireless gear. If you're feeling overwhelmed with it, there's just 3 things that I want you to remember. You should do a scan when you can. That rhymes and it's easy to remember. Do a scan when you can to find a clear frequency. That is, if your wireless allows for scanning. The cheaper stuff usually doesn't, although there are a couple that I've reviewed that do. Second, don't use too much cheap wireless on stage all at once. There is no definitive answer. I can't tell you, oh, you can use 4 every time, it'll be fine. It all depends. Just in general, the more wireless that you want to have on stage at once, the more you should spend to get the higher end wireless gear. And then third, just remember, the more frequency options that you have, usually with the higher end wireless, the more likely it is that you will find a clear channel and your wireless will work at the show that you're playing at. So my recommendations on higher end wireless gear to get for wireless mics or guitars or bass or something like that, I like either the Shure SLXD or the Sennheiser EWD. And then for in-ear monitors, I like the Audio-Technica ATW 3255. The Shure and Sennheiser ones are both digital models. They both have more than 40 megahertz of tuning bandwidth, which is my recommendation of where you start to get to a more professional wireless system, digital with more than 40 megahertz of tuning bandwidth. You can always go for the higher end ones that have even more tuning bandwidth, the Shure QLXD, the Shure ULXD, or the Axion Digital, or the Sennheiser EWDX model. All of those have more wireless frequencies to choose from, but they are going to cost more money. So the Shure SLXD and the Sennheiser EWD are usually the ones I recommend that are good for most people, unless you're doing like really large tours or a lot of wireless at once. Now the Audio-Technica in-ear monitor system, it spans 470 to 608 megahertz. That's 138 megahertz of tuning bandwidth. That's pretty incredible, especially at this price point. Plus, when you scan, you get that RF graph so you can see what frequencies are open. I use that all the time when I go to a show. I'll scan from my Audio-Technica one and I'll go, okay, is it going to be a challenging RF environment or is it pretty open? I don't have to worry as much. And if you do decide to go cheap, I do have a tip for you. Just understand the risk of going with cheaper stuff. However, there is a trick that I use with that. If you do decide to go cheap, because they're so cheap, I do recommend to get 2 or 3 of the cheap wireless systems. And when you buy those, you want to buy them on different frequency ranges. Get one in 5.8 gigahertz, another one in 900 megahertz, if that's legal in your country. It is in the United States, that's a whole other topic. And then one in 2.4. So if you use one in 5.8 and it's not working, it wouldn't make sense to switch to another one in 5.8 because likely 5.8 gigahertz is crowded. And that is why I'm actually giving away 4 different wireless guitar systems. One wireless is on 2.4 gigahertz, one wireless is on 5.8 gigahertz, another one's in the 900 megahertz region, another one's in the 500 megahertz region. So you have a lot of different options to find a clear frequency, and that's why I'm going to give away 4 of these to one of my subscribers. Please just manage your expectations if you do decide to buy cheap. I know not everyone has a $500 budget, but I get asked constantly, I just want a wireless that's always going to work and I have a budget of $50. Remember, if your frequencies are open on your cheap wireless, it will work, but higher end gear has more options to find a clear channel. If you spend $10 on a wireless system or even under $200, you do have to set your expectations accordingly. And please do not be the guy who spends $3 on a wireless on Temu, complains that it doesn't work, and then complains that the directions are in Chinese. Just manage your expectations. If you don't want to mess with this, you don't want to risk it, go with the higher end wireless. But if you are on a budget, getting 2 or 3 on the cheaper ones, that is the workaround, and it's more likely that your wireless will work. So hopefully now you understand why your wireless is cutting out and why there is no definitive answer of how many wireless you can use at once. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. It took a while to put this video together, and hitting the thumbs up button is a free way to support the channel and no extra cost to you, and I would appreciate it. Like I mentioned, I'm doing that giveaway for one of my subscribers, so don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And then to enter the giveaway, you just have to leave a comment down below and use the magic phrase. You can say whatever you want down below in the comment section, just as long as at some point you say the magic phrase, Halsey. I've been listening to her album, If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power. Great album. Trent Reznor actually was one of the producers on it. Halsey's the magic phrase today. Just announced her tour. It's the first thing that came to my mind. You only have 24 hours to enter the giveaway, and I will announce the winner on this date right here. Please remember, do not respond to scammers. I'll never ask you for money in the comments section. If anyone messages you, says that they're me, and they start asking you for money for shipping or whatever reason they have, that's a scammer pretending to be me. Do not respond to scammers. Do not send them money. 2 other videos of mine to check out. Check out my video on which wireless band you should get for your wireless gear. The bands will basically tell you what frequency ranges you have as options for your wireless gear. Definitely worth knowing. And also check out my video on 5 common mistakes when using wireless music gear. I made 4 of these mistakes on my journey with wireless gear. You can check out both of those videos by clicking the links on your screen now. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on my social media pages at Scott Yule Music. If you have any other cool gear you want me to check out, leave them as a comment down below. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.